Fog was slowly spreading through the streets of Salinas when the police station received a call about an incident at the Olatunde Originals design studio. A receptionist at a neighboring office discovered the body when he came in to borrow a stapler. Detective Amara Bekele rushed to the scene immediately. She'd seen a lot in her 15 years on the force, but each new crime still made her heart race. She parked in front of a glass building with a stainless steel sign. Police tape already fenced off the entrance, and patrol officers were holding back curious passers-by. "Good morning, Detective," Officer Chalmers greeted her. "Victim's upstairs, 3rd floor. The medical examiner's already there." "What do we know so far?" Amara asked, pulling on latex gloves. "Kemba Olatunde, 42, studio owner. The body was discovered around 7 o'clock this morning. Preliminary reports say death occurred between midnight and 3 in the morning." Amara nodded and headed for the elevator. The cabin smelled faintly of expensive perfume and coffee. On the 3rd floor, the elevator door opened right in front of the glass entrance to the studio. Inside, there was perfect order, except for the central part of the room. Snow-white walls were decorated with sketches of clothes. Mannequins in designer outfits stood along the walls, as if silent witnesses of what had happened. In the opposite corner from the entrance, there was a spacious sofa covered with burgundy-colored silk fabric. An overturned bottle of champagne was lying on the floor, the liquid from which had already been absorbed into the carpet. And in the middle of the studio, on the designer's cutting table, lay the body of Kemba Olatunde. Long fabric-cutting scissors protruded from her chest. The red dress she had probably sewn before she died was now stained with her own blood. Medical examiner Lauren Mbeki looked up when he saw Amara. "Multiple stab wounds," he said. "The primary cause of death is a stab wound to the heart, but before that, she was stabbed several times with the same weapon in the abdomen and arms. Sounds like a crime of passion." Amara nodded and walked around the table. "Any signs of resistance?" "Cuts on the palms of her hands." Lauren gently lifted the victim's hand. She was trying to defend herself. The detective took a close look around the room. Her attention was drawn to the furnishings by the couch. "Looks like she had a guest," she noted, pointing to the 2 glasses. "And not a business meeting by the looks of it," one of the CSIs added, nodding at the crumpled linens. Amara looked at the body thoughtfully. Kemba Olatunde was a well-known figure in California's fashion world, a transgendered woman who had made a name for herself through exquisite outfits and extravagant shows. The victim's dark skin now took on a grayish hue, and her open eyes stared at the ceiling as if still searching for inspiration. "Personal effects?" Amara asked the officer collecting evidence. "Purse over there." He pointed to a designer bag on the table in the corner. Inside was a wallet, makeup, phone, and keys. Amara walked over and put on a fresh pair of gloves. The phone was unlocked. Apparently, forensics had already managed to access it. She scrolled through the latest messages and stopped when she saw the correspondence with the My Knox contact. The messages were by no means of a sibling nature. "Can't wait for tonight. Bringing your favorite champagne," Knox wrote. "I'll get the studio ready. Father is leaving tonight," Kemba replied. Subsequent messages were even more intimate. Amara frowned. Judging by the content, Knox was much younger than Kemba and probably related to her. "Did the victim have any family?" she asked the officer. "The husband is Bamidele Adidi, a well-known photographer. We are trying to contact him now, but he is on a business trip, according to neighbors. They have a daughter, or rather his daughter from his first marriage, Knox Adidi, 19 years old." Amara felt a chill run down her spine. Stepdaughter. Now the intimate messages were taking on an even more disturbing nature. "Find Knox Adidi, immediately," she ordered. An hour later, Amara was standing on the doorstep of the Adidi Olatunde family's luxurious mansion in one of Salinas's most prestigious neighborhoods. The house was modern in style. Glass, concrete, and wood combined in a harmonious composition. The courtyard had a fountain, and tropical plants created the feeling of an exotic oasis. No one answered the phone, but after a couple of minutes a cab pulled up to the house. A young girl with dark glasses and a mop of curly hair gathered in a high bun got out. She wore a simple black dress, which contrasted with her brightly colored bracelets and massive earrings. When she saw the police car and Amara, she froze. "Knox Aditi?" the detective asked. The girl slowly took off her glasses, revealing tear-stained eyes. "Yes," she answered quietly. "Did something happen?" Amara realized that such news was not something that could be delivered on the doorstep, but there was no time to look for a more appropriate place. "I'm sorry, but your stepmother, Kemba Olatunde, was found dead this morning in her studio." Knox didn't shriek, didn't faint. She just stood there, looking through Amara as if she was a ghost. Then she slowly ran her hand over her face. "I already know," she whispered. "The police called me a couple hours ago. I was at the counselor's office." Amara scrutinized her reaction. Something about the girl's demeanor seemed odd, as if shock was mixed with some other, more complicated feeling. "I need to ask you a few questions. Can we come in?" Knox nodded silently and opened the door. Inside, the house was as immaculate as the outside. Modern furniture, artwork on the walls, large windows overlooking the garden. They made their way to the living room, where Knox sank mechanically into an armchair. She wasn't crying, but her hands were visibly trembling. "When was the last time you saw your stepmother?" Amara asked, taking a seat across from her. "Yesterday morning," Knox replied. "I was having breakfast when she left for work. Said she'd be at the studio late." "And your father?" "He flew to New York 3 days ago, taking pictures for some glossy magazine." Amara paused to consider her next question. "We found your messages on Kemba's phone," she said finally. "They were pretty personal." A look of horror flashed across Knox's face, quickly replaced by a stony mask. "I don't know what you mean," she said, but her eyes gave her away. "Knox," Amara stepped forward. "You agreed to meet her at the studio last night. You brought champagne. There were candles, linens." The girl closed her eyes and inhaled deeply. "I didn't kill her," she said with sudden firmness. "I didn't even come to the meeting. I had a breakdown. I went to a counselor instead. You can check it out." Before Amara could ask her next question, the doorbell rang. Knox flinched. "I'll get it," Amara said, and headed for the door. On the doorstep stood a young woman with short-cropped hair dyed a deep purple color. Her face expressed anxiety and impatience. "Where's Knox?" she asked without preamble. "I'm her friend, Zaria Lumumba." Amara introduced herself and escorted the girl into the living room. When she saw Knox, Zaria rushed to her and embraced her, ignoring the detective's presence. "Oh my God, honey, I rushed over as soon as I heard," she said, stroking Knox's back. "Are you okay?" Knox didn't answer, but snuggled up to her friend, as if she was just now letting herself feel what was happening. Amara watched the scene with professional interest. There was something possessive, almost intimate, in Zaria's gesture, and when she raised her gaze to the detective, there was an unconcealed hostility in it. "What's going on here? Why are you interrogating her at a time like this?" Zaria demanded. "I'm investigating a murder, Ms. Lumumba," Amara replied calmly. "I'm asking the standard questions." "Kemba was a terrible person," Zaria suddenly said with such bitterness that Amara raised her eyebrows involuntarily. "She didn't deserve Knox, not as a daughter, not as anyone else." "Zaria, please," Knox whispered, squeezing her hand. Amara shifted her gaze from one girl to the other. "Were you aware of the nature of the relationship between Knox and her stepmother?" she asked Zaria. "Of course I did," she snorted. "I'm Knox's best friend. I know everything that's going on with her, and I told her that this relationship was a mistake." Knox covered her face with her hands. "So you're confirming that Knox and Kemba had a romantic relationship?" Amara asked. "Not romantic," Zaria replied sharply. "Kemba manipulated her, used her, just like everyone else around her." Amara made a note in her notebook. Ms. Lumumba, where were you last night between midnight and 3 in the morning? Zaria froze, then slowly straightened up. At home, alone, working on makeup sketches for the next show. You're working with Kemba? Amara asked. I was, Zaria corrected. I'm a makeup artist. I did the model's makeup for her shows. And how was your working relationship? Zaria puckered her lips. Professionally. She was talented, no denying that. But as a person, she shook her head. Arrogant, insensitive, cruel. Always got what she wanted, no matter the cost. Amara noted the undisguised distaste in the girl's voice. Did you work the fashion show yesterday? No, there was no show yesterday. I told you, I was at home. Amara nodded and turned her attention back to Knox. You said you didn't go to the meeting with Kemba. You went to a counselor instead. At what time? Around 11 p.m., Knox answered quietly. I was there until 2 in the morning. Dr. Imani can confirm. We had an emergency session. And what necessitated the emergency session? Amara asked. Knox glanced over to Zaria, who nodded faintly. Yeah, I found out something. About Kemba. And about myself, Knox said slowly. It came as a shock, and I didn't know how to handle it. What exactly did you learn? Amara insisted. But Knox looked away, clearly not ready to talk about it. She needs to rest, Zaria interjected. She's in shock. Can you continue tomorrow? Amara studied Knox's face. Something told her that the girl really wasn't involved in the murder, but she was definitely hiding something. Okay, the detective agreed. But I'll need the psychologist's contact information to confirm your alibi, and we'll continue tomorrow. When Amara left the house, she paused on the porch, looking out at the manicured garden. The story was beginning to take shape, but much was still unclear. The relationship between stepmother and stepdaughter, her friend's obvious hatred for the murdered woman, some secret that Knox had learned by going to a psychologist instead of seeing Kemba. The detective's phone rang, interrupting her musings. Bekele here, she answered. Detective, it's the lab. We found something interesting on the victim's cell phone. There's an email from the clinic confirming a regular appointment. Kemba Olatunde was on antiretroviral therapy. She had HIV. Amara slowly lowered her hand with the phone. Perhaps that was what Knox had found out? And if so, it changed the whole picture. She cast one last glance at the house, where the silhouettes of the two girls huddled closely together behind the curtains, and headed for the car. The first suspicions had fallen on Knox because of the intimate messages and her strange behavior, but the girl's alibi, if confirmed, would completely eliminate her from the list of suspects. The morning began for Amara Bekele with a glass of strong coffee and a stack of documents on her desk. The Salinas police station was buzzing like a beehive. The Kemba Olatunde murder case had already attracted media attention. You bet, a famous designer, a transgender woman, brutally murdered in her own studio. First on the agenda was a visit to the Mercy Hills clinic, from where the email found in the victim's cell phone came. Amara parked outside the modern glass and concrete building and showed her ID to the front desk. I'd like to speak to Kemba Olatunde's attending physician, she said to the receptionist, a young woman with a neat bundle on her head. Just a moment. The receptionist clicked the computer keys. This is Dr. Elizabeth Ngozi. I'll see if she's available. 10 minutes later, Amara was sitting in the doctor's office, a short woman with short graying hair and a penetrating gaze. I understand the complexity of the situation, Detective, Dr. Ngozi said as she looked over the paperwork Amara had submitted to gain access to her medical records. But patient confidentiality is our top priority. This is a murder investigation, Doctor. Besides, the patient is dead, and the information in his medical records could be critical to solving the crime. Dr. Ngozi sighed and nodded. In that case, I will provide you with the necessary information. She turned to the computer and opened the patient's chart. Kemba Olatunde came to us 3 years and 4 months ago after testing positive for HIV. Since then, she has been on antiretroviral therapy under my care. How did she get infected? Amara asked. It's not known exactly. She assumed through an ex-partner she had met shortly before. The doctor reviewed the records. The therapy was effective. Viral load dropped to an undetectable level after 6 months of treatment. Undetectable? What does that mean? It means the virus in the blood is undetectable by standard tests. The risk of transmission in such a case is minimal, but not completely ruled out, especially under certain conditions. Amara made a note in her notebook. Did Kemba know about this? About the risk of transmission? Absolutely. We had discussed at length all aspects of living with HIV, including the need for protected sex, regardless of viral load levels. Did she mention any intimate relationships in the last year? Dr. Ngozi frowned. No. She said she was happily married and had no other partners. The doctor was silent for a moment. There's something else, Detective. About a week ago, I received a request for counseling from a young woman, Knox Aditi. She took an HIV test, which came back positive. Given the last name, I assumed a family connection, but I wasn't at liberty to discuss it with Kemba without Knox's consent. And what did Knox say? Did she know that Kemba gave it to her? She didn't give a name. She just said she suspected a certain person. She was very upset, almost in shock. I referred her to a psychologist, Dr. Imani. Amara felt her pulse quicken. A picture was beginning to emerge. I need copies of all the medical records of Kemba Olatunde and Knox Aditi regarding their HIV status, she said. And I would like to speak to Dr. Imani. Amara left Dr. Ngozi's office with a folder of documents and went straight to the psychologist's office. Dr. Imani, a tall man with dreadlocks pulled back into a ponytail, confirmed that Knox had indeed been in emergency counseling with him the night of Kemba's murder, from 11 p.m. to 2 in the morning. She was in a terrible emotional state, he revealed. To learn about a diagnosis like that at 19 is traumatic. But to realize you've been betrayed by a loved one who knew your status and put you at risk, it's devastating. Did she give that person's name? Amara asked. Yes, Dr. Imani nodded. Her stepmother, Kembu Olatunde. The information she had gotten was enough to go back to Knox with more specific questions. Amara found her still in the same mansion, but now the girl was alone. Zaria was nowhere to be seen. Knox looked different this time, pale, with dark circles under her eyes, but more collected, as if she had made a decision. I know why you're here, she said, gesturing for Amara to come inside. You spoke to my doctors. They were seated in the same living room as yesterday. Knox was sitting very straight with her hands in her lap. Yes, Amara confirmed. I know about your diagnosis, Knox, and that you think you were infected by Kemba. Knox swallowed and nodded. I didn't want to talk about it yesterday. It's complicated. Tell me everything from the beginning, Amara asked softly. About the relationship with Kemba. When did it start? Knox took a deep breath. About a year ago. My father was away a lot, working on his photography projects. Kemba and I were alone together. At first, it was just talking about art and fashion. She helped me get into art school. Then she started taking me to shows, introducing me to the right people. Knox stopped talking. I admired her. She was so strong, confident, talented. And then, it just happened. An intimate relationship, Amara clarified. Yes, Knox replied quietly. I fell in love. I thought she did too. I realize now that it was manipulation. She controlled my life, my career. I depended on her. And when did you find out about her HIV status? Knox closed her eyes. A week ago, I happened to see a notification on her phone from a drug tracking app. There was a drug name that seemed strange. I Googled it and... The girl's voice trembled. It was an antiretroviral drug to treat HIV. I couldn't believe it. I looked further and found letters from her doctor, test results in her mail. She'd known about her status for over 3 years, and in all that time, she hadn't told me. She hadn't protected me. What did you do after you found out? Nothing at first. I was shocked. Then I got tested. 3 days ago, I came back positive. Knox could barely hold back the tears. Told her I knew. She didn't apologize. Said the risk was minimal, that her viral load was undetectable. Like that's an excuse. She lied to me, put me in danger, and she didn't even see fit to tell me. Did you tell anyone else? Just Zaria. She's my best friend. The only person I trust completely. Amara watched Knox closely. And how did she react? She was furious. She wanted to go and tell Kemba. I begged her not to. I told her I'd take care of it myself. Knox tucked a strand of hair behind her ear nervously. The night Kemba was killed, we agreed to meet at the studio. I wanted to talk, to figure out what to do next. But on the way, I had a panic attack. I couldn't breathe. I thought I was going to die in the cab. I called Dr. Imani, and he saw me on an emergency basis. I stayed with him until 2 in the morning. Then I went home and fell asleep on sleeping pills. In the morning, I found out Kemba was dead. And Zaria? Did she know about your meeting with Kemba? Knox froze for a moment. Yes, she did. I told her. She was against it, said Kemba didn't even deserve to talk, that we should just end the relationship and sue. Where was she that night? I don't know. Knox looked away. At home, I guess. She said she was working on some sketches. Amara made a note in her notebook and moved on to the next topic. Is your father coming back today? Yeah, he's supposed to fly in tonight. Yeah, I don't know how to tell him about all this. As if in response to her words, the front door swung open and a tall man with graying temples entered the house. He was wearing an elegant suit and a leather camera bag hung over his shoulder. Knox? He called out. I got a call from the police saying that Kemba... He froze when he saw his daughter in the detective's company. Daddy, Knox whispered, her composure finally crumbling. She cried, covering her face with her hands. Bamidele Aditi rushed to his daughter, hugging her. What had happened? Did someone say she was killed? Is it true? Amara stood up and introduced herself. Mr. Aditi, I'm Detective Bekele. I'm afraid it's true. Your wife was found dead in her studio yesterday morning. Bamidele turned pale and sank down on the sofa beside his daughter, still hugging her. How did it happen? She was murdered. We're investigating the case. Amara got straight to the point. Mr. Aditi, I need to know where you were the night before last night between midnight and 3 a.m. I was in New York, at the opening of my photography exhibit at the Apollo Gallery. There were over 100 guests, the press. Then dinner with the gallery curator and a few critics at the Lunar restaurant. Got back to the Plaza Hotel around 2 a.m. The concierge can confirm. I'll check. Amara nodded. Mr. Aditi, there are things you need to know. They concern your wife and daughter. Knox raised her head sharply. No, she said. Please, I want to tell him myself. Amara looked at the girl carefully, then nodded. Okay, I'll wait on the porch. As Amara walked out of the house, she took a deep breath of fresh air. Through the living room window, she could see Knox saying something to her father, his expression changing from bewilderment to shock, then to rage, and finally, to deep sadness. He hugged his daughter, stroked her hair, then covered her face with his hands. 20 minutes later, the door opened and Bamidele Aditi stepped out onto the porch. He looked 10 years older. Detective, his voice was hoarse. I didn't know. I swear to you, I had no idea about the relationship or the disease. If only I'd been around, noticed. It's not your fault, Mr. Aditi, Amara said softly. No, it was my fault. I was so consumed with my work, my career, that I didn't see what was going on in my own family. He shook his head. And now my daughter, she's... Modern medicine has made great strides in treating HIV, Amara noted. With the right treatment, Knox could lead a full life. But the fact that this woman, that I trusted, that I loved, did this to my daughter, Bamadel's eyes flashed with anger. If she wasn't already dead, I myself would have. He cut himself short and took a deep breath. I'm sorry. That's not what I meant. I understand how you feel, Amara said. But right now, it's important to focus on supporting Knox. Bamadel nodded. Yes, of course. She's the most important thing. He was quiet for a moment. Detective, will you catch whoever did this? That's my job, Amara replied. I have one more question. What do you know about Zaria Lumumba, Knox's friend? Zaria? Bamadel thought for a moment. Nice girl. Very talented makeup artist. She and Knox have been friends since high school. Kemba hired her to work her shows a couple years ago. Why do you ask? Just gathering information, Amara said evasively. Have you noticed anything different about their relationship? Whose relationship? Zaria and Knox? Bamadel shrugged. They are very close. Sometimes I thought Zaria was overprotective of Knox, but... He paused. Do you think there's something between them? I'm not jumping to conclusions, Amara said. But Zaria knew about Knox's relationship with Kemba and the diagnosis, and she made no secret of her dislike for your wife. Dislike? Bamadel frowned. I'd never noticed it. Although, I must admit, Kemba could be a difficult person, demanding. But a grudge? Amara decided not to pursue the subject. Thank you for the information, Mr. Aditi. If you have any questions or remember anything important, call me anytime. She handed him her business card. And please take care of your daughter. She really needs support right now. As she drove away from Aditi's house, Amara mentally summarized the situation. Everything pointed to Knox not being involved in the murder. Her alibi was solid. Bamadel was also out of the picture. He couldn't physically have been at the scene of the crime. But Zaria, her unconcealed hatred of Kemba, her knowledge of the betrayal and illness, her desire to protect Knox, and a very flimsy alibi. We needed to find out more about her and her relationship with Knox and Kemba. Amara decided to start by interviewing the staff at the design studio. Maybe one of them had seen conflicts between Zaria and Kemba or noticed something suspicious. On the way to the studio, Amara called the station. I need information on Zaria Lumumba, she said. Check everything. Previous arrests, complaints, medical history, and get a warrant to access her phone records for the last week, especially interested in calls and texts the night of the murder. At Kemba's studio, the police had already finished collecting evidence, but the crime scene was still sealed off. Amara found the receptionist, a young woman named Aisha, who worked the front desk. Zaria Lumumba? Aisha frowned upon hearing the question. Yes, she worked with Kemba sometimes. Did makeup for the models. Very talented. How did they socialize? Were there any conflicts between them? Aisha hesitated. Not that there were conflicts. Kemba was harsh with everyone. But with Zaria. There was one incident about a month ago. Zaria had suggested a makeup concept for a fashion show. Kemba criticized her ideas in front of everyone, very rudely. Said Zaria should know her place and stay out of things she didn't understand. Zaria ran out of the studio in tears. Aisha thought for a moment. And then, Kemba had hired another makeup artist for the main show of the season, even though she had always worked with Zaria before. It was a major blow to her career and reputation. Was Zaria here the day of the murder? No, I didn't see her. But I left around 8 p.m. Kemba was alone, said she wanted to work on a new collection. Amara nodded and continued her questioning. Gradually, a picture emerged. Kemba was a talented but tough executive, prone to manipulation and emotional duress. Zaria, initially Kemba's protege, eventually became the type of person the designer detested, especially after Zaria began spending more time with Knox. Amara's phone rang. It was an officer from the precinct. Detective, we checked the surveillance footage outside Kemba's studio. On the night of the murder, around midnight, the camera caught a man entering the building. The quality isn't great, but it looks like a woman with short hair that might have been dyed a bright color. It could be Zaria, Amara said. What about access to her phone records? Warrant's been obtained. Checking now. Preliminary. Her phone was turned off between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. the night of the murder. And the location before it was turned off? Last signal was 3 blocks from Kemba's studio. Amara felt her pulse quicken. The evidence was starting to come together. All right. Cell phone rings. Keep working. I'm going back to the station. Back at the station, another discovery awaited her. Forensics found skin particles under Kemba's fingernails. She fought back desperately against her attacker. DNA analysis had not yet been completed, but it was tentatively clear that it was a woman's DNA. One last detail. There was a strange glitch in the studio's security system. Someone had entered an access code at midnight, but there was no entry in the security log. Who had access to the codes? Amara asked the technician. According to the records, only Kemba herself, her husband, the administrator Aisha, and the technician checked the data, and one other person, labeled simply as Z. This user's last access activation was just the night of the murder, at midnight. Z was Zaria. Amara was almost certain of that, but more solid evidence was needed to make an arrest. They needed to find Zaria and talk to her again, this time with concrete facts in hand. Amara called Knox. Is Zaria with you right now? No, the girl answered. She left about an hour ago, said she had to stop by the house to get some things and then come back. Why? Just wanted to ask her some more questions, Amara said as calmly as possible. Could you give me her address? Knox dictated the address, a small apartment in Salinas's artistic district. Amara headed there immediately, calling for backup on the way. It was already starting to get dark when she arrived at the low red brick building. A neighbor confirmed that Zaria had returned home about an hour ago, but then left again with a small bag. Amara got a warrant to search the apartment. The inside was neat and stylish. Makeup sketches adorned the walls and professional cosmetics stood on shelves. The closet was filled with brightly colored clothes, mostly black and purple. Check the bathroom, Amara ordered. Pay special attention to the laundry basket and the drain. One of the officers soon returned with the find. Detective, take a look at this. They found traces of blood in the sink drain, and it looked like something dark had been washed here recently, stains on the towel. It was circumstantial, but combined with the camera footage and phone records, it reinforced the suspicion. We need to find her, Amara said. And fast. She might try to escape, but Zaria beat them to it. When Amara got back to Aditi's house, Knox said her friend had called and said she was running late. She had some business to attend to. Do you have any idea where she might be? Amara asked. It's important, Knox. The girl looked worried. What's going on, detective? Do you suspect Zaria? We have some questions for her, Amara said evasively. You've known her a long time. Are there places she might go to be alone? Maybe a special place for the two of you? Knox thought for a moment. There's a beach north of town. We used to go there together a lot since high school. There's a little cove there, not a lot of people. Amara sent a patrol car there immediately, but soon got a report. No one was on the beach. If she contacts you, Amara told Knox, please let me know immediately. And don't tell her the police are looking for her. It's for your safety. My safety? Knox opened her eyes wide. Do you think Zaria is dangerous? Amara didn't want to scare the girl, but she couldn't lie either. We don't know for sure, but there is evidence that points to her possible involvement in Kemba's death. Knox shook her head. No, that's impossible. Zaria would never... She would have told me. But doubt flashed in her eyes. All night the police searched for Zaria, but to no avail. It was like she vanished into thin air. Her phone was off, her bank cards unused. Amara sat at her desk, poring over documents on the Kemba Olatunda case. The deeper she delved into the investigation, the more questions arose about Zaria Lumumba, Knox's best friend. Detective, Officer Chalmers peeked into the office. We've got the surveillance footage from the building where Olatunda's studio was located. Amara set aside the file folder and glanced at the screen. The grainy footage showed the entrance to the building. The timestamp showed 11 hours and 45 minutes in the evening, 15 minutes before midnight on the day of the murder. A slender figure with short hair dyed a bright color appeared in the frame. Even in the poor quality of the recording, Zaria Lumumba was recognizable. "Check the exits," Amara ordered. "I want to know when she left the building." A few minutes later, the officer returned with a new tape. It showed Zaria leaving the building at 2:30 in the morning with her head down and her hands in her jacket pockets. "That puts her in Kemba's studio at the time of the murder," Amara concluded. "Call the security guard who was on duty that night. I want his statement." A conversation with the guard, Rodney Okafor, only confirmed Amara's suspicions. "Yes, I've seen this girl," he nodded, looking at the photograph of Zaria. "She came to see Ms. Olatunda often, worked with her. That night, she said they were having a meeting about an upcoming fashion show. Did she look unusual? Was she nervous?" "Now that you ask, yes, she was tense, but I thought it was work-related. Ms. Olatunda was a demanding boss. Everyone was nervous about meeting her." "When Zaria left, did you notice anything strange?" The guard frowned, remembering. "She left very quickly, didn't say goodbye like she usually did. Yes, she kept her hands in her pockets, even though it was warm outside." Amara nodded. The evidence was adding up to a coherent picture. Now it was time to find Zaria and search her apartment. After getting a warrant, she gathered a small group of officers and went to the address Knox had given her. Zaria's apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building in a bohemian neighborhood in Salinas. Neighbors confirmed that they had seen her in the morning, but she was not home at the moment. Together with forensics, Amara began a thorough search. The apartment was small but stylishly furnished. Makeup sketches, art photographs, and art books were everywhere. On the wall in the living room hung a large photograph of Knox, a professional portrait that made the girl look strikingly beautiful. "Detective," one of the CSIs called out from the bedroom, "I think you should take a look at this." He was holding a small leather-bound notebook found in the bedside table. Amara opened it and began to read. "Knox told me today about her relationship with Kemba. I knew it. Saw the way that woman looks at her, touches her. It's disgusting. Knox deserves better. Deserves someone who will love her genuinely, not use her." Amara flipped a few pages. "Kemba humiliated me in front of the whole team today. Said my makeup ideas were cheap and tasteless. I saw Knox looking at me with pity. I don't want her pity. I want her to have an epiphany and see what a manipulator this woman is." And another entry, dated a week earlier. "Knox told me today. I always knew Kemba was a monster, but this... How can you know you have HIV and not tell your partner? How can you put the person you claim to love at risk? Knox is a wreck. I've never seen her like this. She's planning to meet with Kemba, have a talk. Talk. That thing shouldn't be talked to. It should be..." The recording was cut short, but the meaning was clear. The last entry was dated the day of the murder. Done. Now she will never hurt Knox again. Amara closed the journal and handed it to the CSI. "Bag this as evidence, and keep looking. Especially look for clothes with traces of blood or cleaning supplies. And check the trash." The bathroom showed signs of a recent general cleanup. It smelled like bleach, and in the dirty laundry basket was a freshly laundered dark towel that, despite being washed, showed traces that looked like blood. "Send it to forensics," Amara ordered, "and keep looking for the murder weapon." But the scissors used to kill Kemba were left at the scene, stuck in the victim's body. Forensics had already found fingerprints on them, which now had to be compared to Zaria's. Back at the station, Amara got the results of the preliminary forensics. "The prints on the handle of the scissors match Zaria Lumumba's," the expert said. "And skin particles were found under the victim's fingernails, whose DNA also matched that of the suspect. Kemba fought back and probably scratched her attacker." Amara nodded. She now had enough evidence for an arrest. All that remained was to find Zaria herself. "Put a bolo out on her," she ordered. And put Aditi's house under surveillance. Maybe she'll try to contact Knox. The wait didn't last long. That evening, the station received a call from the patrolman watching Aditi's house. "Detective, Zaria Lumumba just arrived. She seems calm, carrying a bag of some kind." "Don't take any action," Amara replied. "I'm on my way, but be prepared to be detained if she tries to leave." As they approached Aditi's house, Amara noticed that there were lights on in the windows. Through the large living room windows, she could see Knox and Zaria sitting side by side on the couch. They were talking, and Zaria was holding Knox's hand as if comforting her. Amara quietly walked up to the porch and rang the doorbell. Bamidele Aditi opened, looking haggard and aged. "A detective?" He looked surprised. "Is something wrong?" "I need to talk to Zaria Lumumba," Amara said. Bamidele nodded and led her into the living room. When she saw Amara, Zaria was petrified. Her hand on Knox's shoulder tensed. "Zaria Lumumba," Amara said in a formal tone. "I need you to come with me to the station for a statement." "Testify?" Knox shifted her gaze from Amara to Zaria in confusion. "About what?" "The murder of Kemba Olatunde," Amara answered, keeping her eyes on Zaria. There was silence in the room for a moment, broken only by the ticking of the clock. "I don't understand," Knox finally said. Zaria had already testified. What changed? Amara decided to be direct. "We found evidence that Ms. Lumumba was in Kemba's studio the night of the murder, between midnight and 2 hours and 30 minutes past midnight." Knox turned pale and turned to her friend. "Zaria?" Zaria was silent, staring at the floor. Her shoulders slumped as if a heavy weight had been lifted from them. "I think we should talk at the station," Amara said. "Zaria, you have the right to an attorney." "I don't need a lawyer," Zaria finally said. Her voice sounded tired but determined. "I'll tell you everything, but first I want to tell Knox something." She turned to her friend, who was staring at her with wide-open eyes full of incomprehension and fear. "Knox, everything I've done for you. You have to know that. I never meant to hurt you, only to protect you." "Zaria, what are you talking about?" Knox paused, suddenly realizing. No, you couldn't." "Let's go to the station," Amara said softly, approaching Zaria. "We'll sort it all out there." Zaria nodded and stood up. Knox grabbed her hand. "I'm coming with you," she said. "No," Zaria shook her head. "You should stay with your father. Detective Bekele will take care of me." At the station, Amara led Zaria into the interrogation room. Despite the situation, the girl held herself with dignity. She sat up straight with her hands folded on the table and waited calmly for questions. "We found your diary, Zaria," Amara began. "And we have CCTV footage that confirms your presence in Kemba's studio the night of the murder. Your fingerprints on the murder weapon and your DNA under the victim's fingernails. Do you want to tell us what happened?" Zaria took a deep breath. "Yes, I do. I killed Kemba Olatunde, and I don't regret it." "Tell me what happened," Amara asked, turning on the recorder. "It started a few months ago," Zaria began. "I noticed a change in Knox's behavior. She became distant, always talking about Kemba, admiring her. I could see what was going on, but Knox denied it, said it was just a working relationship. And then, she admitted they were having an affair." Zaria clenched her hands into fists. I was furious. Not at Knox, at Kemba. She'd manipulated her, used her power and influence. Knox was so young, so naive. Kemba controlled every aspect of her life, from her clothes to her friends. Even me, she tried to alienate me, humiliate me at work, pull me away from projects. Amara listened without interrupting. And then, a week ago, I stopped by Kemba's dressing room before the show. She was taking her medication. I saw the name on the package, Biktarvy. I didn't know what it was, but I memorized it and looked it up online later. Zaria grinned bitterly. It was an HIV drug. I began to suspect the worst. She told how she later found an app on Kemba's phone to track her antiretroviral medication and test results confirming her HIV-positive status. I was shocked. This woman knew she had the disease and was still having intimate relations with Knox. Didn't tell her, didn't protect her. I convinced Knox to get tested without telling her my suspicions. Just said it was reasonable, given her new sexual activity. Zarya fell silent, gathering her thoughts. When the result came back positive, Knox was shattered. She knew immediately who she had contracted the infection from. She had no other partners. At first, she didn't want to believe that Kemba knew about her status and had hidden it. She decided to meet her, to talk to her. But at the last moment, she had a panic attack and went to a psychologist instead of the studio. "And you decided to talk to Kemba instead of her," Amara stated. "Yes," Zarya nodded. "I just wanted to talk, to tell her that I knew the truth, and to demand that she leave Knox alone. But when I got to the studio..." Zarya closed her eyes, remembering. Kemba was arrogant. At first, she denied everything. Then, when I showed her pictures of her medication and the apps I'd made on my phone, she laughed. Said her viral load was undetectable, that the risk of transmission was minimal, that she didn't have to explain anything to anyone. And then she said that Knox was just a toy to her, an amusement, a way to relieve the boredom of marriage, that she'd had many like Knox and would have more. Zarya's voice shook with anger. "I lost control. There were cutting scissors on the table. I grabbed them and..." She shook her head. "I don't remember the rest of it vaguely." Kemba screamed, struggled. "All I remember is my rage. How could that woman play with Knox's life like that? How could she be so indifferent to ruining her future?" Amara watched Zarya carefully. Despite her confession, the girl didn't look remorseful. "You love Knox, don't you?" Amara asked. "Not just as a friend." Zarya looked up. "I've loved her my whole life, since high school. But she never saw me as anything but a friend. And then Kemba came along and Knox was so enamored with her. And you were jealous. Yes, I was jealous. But that wasn't the point. I could accept that Knox loved someone else if that person really loved her back. But Kemba didn't. She used her, put her in danger, lied to her. And when I found out about HIV, Zarya shook her head. I couldn't let her continue to ruin Knox's life." Amara closed the notebook. "Zarya Lumumba, you are under arrest for the murder of Kemba Olatunde. Anything you say can be used against you in court." Zarya nodded as if she had expected these words. "I understand, and I am ready to take responsibility for my actions. Just take care of Knox. She shouldn't feel guilty. It was my choice, not hers." As Zarya was led away to her cell, Amara returned to her desk and saw Knox there. The girl sat with her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes red from crying. "Is it true?" she asked when she saw Amara. "Zarya really..." "Yes," the detective replied softly. She confessed. Knox covered her face with her hands. "I can't believe it. Zarya. She was always so kind, so caring. How could she..." "She did it because of you," Amara said. "To protect you." "I didn't ask her to do that," Knox exclaimed. "I would never ask someone to kill for me." "I know," Amara nodded. "But Zarya saw you suffer. She saw what Kemba did to you, and she just broke down." Knox shook her head. "I don't know what to feel. Part of me is grateful that she wanted to protect me, but the other part, I'm horrified by what she did, and that I somehow caused it." "It's not your fault, Knox," Amara said firmly. "You're a victim too. A victim of Kemba's manipulations and Zarya's complicated feelings. She loved me," Knox said quietly. "Not just as a friend. I always knew it, but I pretended not to notice. Because I didn't want to lose our friendship. Because I couldn't reciprocate. And now you need to focus on yourself," Amara said. "Your health, your healing, both physically and emotionally." Knox nodded, wiping away her tears. "Can I see her? Talk to her?" "Not now," Amara shook her head. "But soon, when all the formalities have been taken care of." At that moment, Bamidele Adidi entered the station. On seeing his daughter, he quickly walked over to her and hugged her. "I will take you home," he said. "You need to rest." Knox snuggled up to her father like a little girl seeking protection. "I don't know if I'll ever feel safe again," she whispered. "You will," Bamidele said confidently. "We'll get through this together. I'll never leave you alone again." Amara watched father and daughter leave the station and thought about how a series of betrayals and forbidden passions had destroyed the lives of everyone involved in this story. Kemba, who had used her power to manipulate. Knox, who trusted the wrong person. Zaria, whose love turned into a destructive force. And Bamidele, too immersed in his career to notice what was going on in his own family. A few weeks later, the court sentenced Zaria to 15 years in prison for second-degree murder. Given the circumstances and the heartfelt confession, the sentence was lighter than it might have been. Knox began treatment for HIV. Modern medicine allowed her to hope for a long and fulfilling life, despite her diagnosis. She saw a psychologist regularly, trying to cope with the trauma of betrayal and loss. Bamidele Adidi left his career as a photographer to be near his daughter. He sold most of his work and used the proceeds to set up a foundation to support young people living with HIV. And Amara Bekele continued her work, knowing that there are too many tangled stories in the world, too much pain and betrayal. But sometimes, in rare moments, she could make the world a little fairer, a little clearer, and that was enough to keep going.